On the telephone here with us this evening on the Saturday Night Music Machine is our good friend Johnny Tillotson. Johnny, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Ted, a lot.
Let's get into a little history. You were born in Jacksonville, Florida, and coming up during the early years back there in Jacksonville. What inspired you, Johnny, to get into the wild, crazy business of show business?
Seeing other performers work. Elvis and Buddy Holly, and I never saw Hank Williams work, but I had such my imagination worked overtime when I listened to him on the Grand Ole Opry, and I was just amazed at how he could reach out and touch people and get encore after encore. And so those were the primary factors, plus Chuck Berry. He influenced me a great deal.
Now, how long did you live in Jacksonville?
I lived there, being from the South, there's, I don't know if it's a custom anymore, but when my grandmother's husband died, my grandfather, in other words, my mother and father made the decision that since I was the older son, that I should live in Palatka, Florida. So at the age of about 9, I lived with my grandmother to quote-unquote take care of her. She was quite capable to take care of herself, but she just, in those days, people didn't go out and get married as quickly again as they do now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would probably been healthier for her if she could have found someone. But for me, it was kind of interesting because it was a small town. I was the only singer in the town, and there was no one to tell me that I couldn't make it. And you can do great things when there's no one around you saying you can't make it. And in fact, everyone was saying I could make it. So the little town of Palatka, which was, I could literally walk to the radio station, and as I walked down the main street, if people heard me singing on that show that morning, they would tell me that as I walked back to have my lunch. They'd say, "Hey, I heard you on the radio. It sounded great." And it's that kind of support that you need in your formative years, and to be quite honest about it, you desperately need it as you mature, no matter what field you're in. And you always hear people talk about their wife or their girlfriend being very helpful in their success. That is a fact. In my case, I'm divorced, and I had to learn how to pick up that support from within and not depend totally on the endorsement of somebody that was extremely close to me. Now, it's wonderful if you can have that. It's great if you can have it. But if you don't have it, you have to come up with it for yourself, and then when you do find it again, it's like icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
But to any ladies listening out there, I can tell you that it's very important to be your own person and have your own identity, and you can do it all. You really can do it all. A lot of people think they can't, and if you just, I'm speaking really to the ladies, if you do your whatever it is, whether you're a housewife or whether you're a career woman, you can do that. But somehow, at the same time, it's really important for you and your husband both, or boyfriend, or whoever you're living with, or whatever, to take off time from the pressures, both pressures, and be supportive of each other as human beings. It's really important, and to remember to have fun.
Right.
I don't know how I got into that. I say a lot of things right off the top of my head. It's the funny thing, when people are dating, they don't think a whole lot about money. They don't get hung up into that. And when it gets real serious, then all of a sudden money becomes a big problem. Money is not the problem. The problem is when you let money become a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's really a fact. See, I guess I've had experience in this because I've had a lot of money, lost money, had money, and lost money, had money, and it dawned on me that you can have a lot of money and be very unhappy. What you've got to really do is like yourself, and if you can get along with yourself and smile a lot, and you get other people to smile and attract people around you that think like you do, which is, a nice, hey, I'm healthy and alive today, and there's something out there to do, you got it licked.
Right. Well, we don't really stop and think about that too often,
No, and that's a good point you brought up. You've got to do that. It's just like, you remember when you learn multiplication tables?
Right, yeah.
You had to learn them and go over them. And these things, you know these things, but unless you think about them every day, you can as you can really slide back into depressions and old bad habits and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Be cognizant of it.
That's right, John. Does the name Toby Dowdy ring a bell with you?
Yeah, Toby is, by the way, a very good friend of mine. And he's one of these guys that owns 4 or 5 radio stations and is a very good businessman. And he gave me my start on television at $5 for the show, and which is fine because that early exposure is what made me know how to work toward that piece of metal, that camera, and treat it like a person.
Now, your first big break, now you were discovered by Lee Rosenberg, I believe.
Yeah, Lee was a very talkative lady that most people found if they just took what tape she had in her hand rather than talk, that was a good deal. So Archie Blyer saw her coming down at RCA Victor, and she said, "I have this," and he said, "Let me have it, Lee," and he kept moving, and Archie produced the Everly Brothers and Andy Williams and the Chordettes and so forth, and he listened to it, and his daughter kind of looked at me as half of an Everly brother. And she was in love with Phil Everly at the time, which didn't hurt. And she said, I think you could sell records. The reason that we had all the success was Archie Blyer. It wasn't so much me, it was him. He would put in from 9 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night in listening to material. He had people bringing material to him every quarter hour. And he had it set up so that he only listened to maybe 4 songs. And he was great at picking material because he used to pick material on the Arthur Godfrey Show. I don't know how many people remember Arthur Godfrey's show, but Blyer used to pick the material for some good artists, but they weren't superstars, but they were good artists. And so he had to pick material that would fit these people. And that's what he'd do with Andy Williams and with the Everly Brothers and me and Bill Hayes with Davy Crockett. And he could really spot a song. That's the name of the game today, even, is the song. That's all it's about.
That's true. Well, was it October '58? Your first single was "Well, I'm Your Man."
Yeah, and that was a rewrite I did of like a Buddy Holly, Peggy Sue, and the other side really turned out to be the stronger. And Archie believed in that because it went to #1 in about 5 places, and in Hawaii it was voted the oldie of all time, or whatever that means, and then we re-released it after Poetry in Motion became a hit. He was that kind of guy.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but it was brought back. It wasn't strong at the beginning, but it was brought back and just zoomed right up the charts.
Right. Well, see, Archie wasn't into payola. And in those days, that was a very heavy trip. And Archie wasn't into that, so it was very hard to compete. And so after the song proved itself #1 in Hawaii, #1 in Worcester, Mass., #1 in Boston, #1 in Florida, #1 in Miami, he said, "No, the song's there. It's just, we can't get it on the radio because you're unknown." And then when Poetry in Motion hit, the follow-up record is usually accepted pretty well. In fact, if you're a writer, if you can grab that follow-up record, you're in good shape.
Which happened to be Jimmy's Girl.
Actually, he put out Dreamy Eyes immediately afterwards.
Okay.
Jimmy's Girl.
Okay, and then Without You came in between
Without
those.
You was kind of interesting.
Tell me about that.
Influenced by Paul Anka and Orbison on that, and I wrote that. And what I've done this year is tried to go back to certain simplicities that you almost do when you don't know any better. That's the beauty of being a child, and the beauty of being an elderly person. Is you've gone through it, you've seen it all, and you now can clear out your desk, so to speak,
right,
and get down to the basics.
So, of all the records you recorded, It Keeps Right On, I heard, and we could go on and on and on. Which one would be Johnny Tillotson's favorite? Which one do you look back on with fond memories? Which one?
It Keeps Right On a Hurtin'.
Yeah.
Elvis did it, and he and I were special friends. And we were special friends right on up till about almost the last year. Not quite the last year, but almost the last year. And Willie Nelson's going to record it. And when I wrote it, I had no idea why that song was going to be a hit, or why it was a hit. In fact, I didn't want to record it. But of course, if you've gone through 2 divorces, and by the way, I'm not bitter about that. A lot of people, I sound philosophical today, but people that go through divorces, men and women, just hang in there, and sometimes they just don't work out. You just put everything you can into them. If they don't work out, you give it some time, and you let everything heal up, and you hope that that you can at least be friends. Sometimes you can't be, and if you can't be, you can't be.
Mhm.
But I do know Why Keeps Right on a Hurtin' has been recorded by so many people, like 113, because when you're going through that, it does keep right on a hurtin'. Every time you see a car that looks like her car, or if you hear a song that reminds you of something, or you see a place where you used to go, ain't no doubt about it. It does keep right on a hurtin'.
Right.
It's a funny thing. A lot of the songs that I recorded, I didn't really know why they were hits. But now that I've matured a bit, I sure understand. I understand it now. I understand why Talk Back Trembling Lips was a hit. Besides hearing, that's what I heard. I just heard that in the tune. I said, hey, that's crazy. But now I know what that song really means subliminally.
Our staff contacted you the other day for this interview. You had mentioned something about you were late for a script reading. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to be reading for it next week, and I'm up for the part of a young attorney that's defending a 17-year-old boy that wants to play football but has a hearing problem, and they don't want him to play. He uses a hearing apparatus in his helmet, and he's never had any trouble before, but they just discovered this. And he also is a violinist, and at the same time, and he's trying to make a decision what he wants to do. And I'm trying to point out that there's a bit of bigotry here, or pressure against him that shouldn't be. If he's been able to play in these contact sports before, he should be allowed to play because he's done it in the past, and there's discrimination here.
Right. Is this a motion picture?
It's a motion picture. It's done by the guy that did Georgie Girl. So with films, I learned this from Coal Miner's Daughter. You just don't go in there with your hopes real high. You just go in there just like, here I am, and you read for it, and then you say, hey, thank you. And if they call, they call. If they don't, you just don't let it. You don't even let it bother you.
Right. Oh, recording plans.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Mel Tillotson is producing me, and that's moving real slow. Not because Mel stutters, but because of his schedule. And it's going to be real open. Gatlin's going to write some stuff for me. I'm writing some stuff. Twitty is going to write some stuff. I'm going to be seeing Eddie Rabbit tonight. A lot of people will contribute to the album, and I think that's kind of an interesting way to go. It's very open. I asked Mel, would he write something for the album, and it's just slow, and you get impatient, and that's another thing that you learn with time is just to cool it sometime and relax. And sometimes I do that best by going to the beach or going to a football game or a baseball game, or just doing what normal people do is a lot of fun for me. I got my Don Sutton gave me a real nice Dodger cap, and I've got up in my bedroom I have Willie Nelson's hat, and I'm a real sucker for sentimentality and all that kind of stuff. I got lots of stuff from Elvis, and we used to exchange gifts, he and I. So I think the nicest gift I ever got from him was a hug, though. I'd given him a beautiful gold crucifix, which was different than most. It's a very unusual one. And it was very hard for him to express himself emotionally. And for him he's a big man, and he was dressed in this black, beautiful fur coat. He's going over to the hospital, as a matter of fact. And he kind of picked me up off the ground, gave me a hug, and said, man, I really appreciate that. And gave my first wife a kiss on the cheek, which I speak to her quite often, and she's never forgotten that. Right.
Yeah, he was one of his biggest fans, I guess, and I was hoping to do an interview with him, but...
I have a lot of stuff on EP. I have him on tape, of course. I interviewed him when I was a little boy. It's a funny thing. I made a big mistake. I had a local radio show. Short-lived, too, by the way, Ted. And I said, hey, I'm going to Jacksonville. I was in Palatka at the time. I'm going to Jacksonville and interview Elvis. And I didn't realize that from the first time I saw him to this time how big he would be. And I couldn't get his attention because the people were all around him. So I went up behind him and I said, whoop, beep, 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 beep. And he thought that was funny. And he looked down because I was short. I'm not too tall now. And he said, oh, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I told everybody on the radio I'd get this interview, and I'm going to look like a fool and people are going to laugh at me in school. He said, okay, come on, let's go do it. And we did it. I wish I had it, but it's beautiful about that.
That's great. We could go on and on and on here. I know you're busy.
Because it's going to run up your bill and it's going to slow down your show.
We could go on and on. Let's do this again sometime real soon. Maybe you can, after you do some recording material, after the motion picture is done, let's get together again and maybe
catch up and see what's going on.
And give my regards to the freeways out there. I miss it. I really do. And all
do you really?
I do, really, honestly.
I don't.
And the smog.
Well, I tell you what, the smog is cleared off today. We're cool today. And you don't have smog where you are.
No, we don't.
I was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, a couple of Sundays ago. Sunday morning, it was so gorgeous I didn't want to come home.
Oh, it's beautiful up here.
But then I can go down to the beach and it's real nice. And there's some really pretty girls at the beach. You know that, don't you?
Beautiful girls here in North Carolina.
That's right.
Beautiful girls. Well, Johnny, appreciate you being on the show here with us tonight.
Ted, it's been great being with you.
Good luck to you.
Happy Saturday night to you.
Thank you, sir. And let's play some Johnny Tillotson music right now. What you say?